Hello guys, and welcome back. Welcome back to the mess that's inside my test mule. This is the test mule car, which basically I don't care about. It's not of any value, and when I'm finished, this whole thing is going to be scrapped. Everything that's in here, all the electrical stuff, will be transferred into the good car. So what are we doing here? We're back at the back of the car again, and as you can see, I've propped open the lid of the battery box so we can have a look inside. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have reconsidered how I'm installing the remainder of the cells, which are currently under the floor of the car here. Now, in a previous video I showed you that I removed like a small cubby hole or a small locker that was under the boot floor of the Freelander. I drilled out the spot welds and took out the bottom of it, threw it away, and made a battery box to put under the floor of the car. Now, anybody that knows anything at all about cars and anything at all about structural integrity will know that that little thing that was spot welded in there has no structural integrity whatsoever. It's not structural to the car, it's not doing anything. However, the powers that be in the UK where I live will not see it that way. They will see that if I have made any changes whatsoever to this car, to the monocoque chassis of the car, they will decree that to be a significant change, and I will not be allowed to put the car on the road. So, trying to figure out how on earth I'm going to sort this out. Now, one way to do it would be to just do away with the batteries that are under the boot and just have fewer batteries. I mean, that's possible. I don't have to have 96 cells in series. I could have fewer than that, but I would lose range, lose power, and all of that, so that's not an option. Another option, or it's not an option I'm going to follow, another option would be to put a battery box on top of this one, on top of this, in the back of the car, and just put all the cells, all the modules in here. But that would make the car less practical, so I'm not happy about doing that. The third option I've got is to go back to my original idea, which is to put a battery box in the fuel tank area, and I'll take you and show you that now. So that brings us back to here again. In a previous video, a long time ago, I made this battery box for the position where the fuel tank used to be. Now, for a couple of reasons, I decided to go with taking out this cubby hole. And now I'm having to go back to putting the cubby hole back in again. But when I was taking that out, I didn't need this battery box because all of the batteries that I needed that space for were going to go in there. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen now, so I'm back to using this. So how am I going to make it fit? The problem I've got is that the area underneath the boot had 6 large modules, and this battery box can hold 4 large modules and 2 small modules. That would leave me needing to find space for a single large module. So what I've decided to do instead is to put the 4 large modules in here, and the 2 large modules that were in the under the floor can go into the other battery box, which I'll take it back out to. Okay, so as you can see, in this battery box we have large modules and small modules. So what I intend to do is to take these 2 and these 2, and they can go in the cubby under the floor, and then 2 large modules can take their place. That's not a problem, I can do that, they'll fit easily. So that leaves me just 4 modules that I need to find space for, and they can fit in the fuel tank box. So basically we're back to using the fuel tank box again, so I guess it wasn't a waste of time building it after all. So as you can see guys, I have the rear subframe dropped just a few inches. It's not enough to affect the brakes or anything like that. Just enough to let me try and get the fuel tank battery box in. And I've come to a conclusion. And that is, those end bits are coming off, because if I don't need them, they're just getting in the way. Okay guys, sadly, all of the footage that I took of me spending hours cutting and grinding and welding and grinding and painting, have all seemed to have been lost somehow. Probably due to stupidity on my behalf, but anyway, sorry about that. You'll just have to take my word for it. It took a while, and you already know my welding isn't great. So anyway, we got it sorted out. We got the two corners cut off because they were sticking out and were catching on the rear subframe. When I went to try and install this box, I basically would have had to completely remove the rear subframe, which is a pain. I've also made a couple of brackets to hold it up. Now, the way these brackets are secured, there are bolts already going down through the floor of the Freelander, which are for securing the rear of the back seats. And so I was able to basically just replace those bolts with longer ones, and it meant that this bracket just goes over those holes, over those bolts, and just a nut holds that in place there. And at the other end, I was able to pick up the fuel tank support bolt holes and just put bolts into them. So that's the original fuel tank support bolts and brackets for the rear seats. So that should be plenty strong enough just for 4 modules. I've also marked a hole. I'll be probably drilling a hole here, or maybe even a couple of holes here. This is where the cables will be coming out. This hole, or this circle, is the location where the original fuel tank pump would have been. So there was always a hole in the floor of the Freelander to be able to access the fuel pump. So that's also something that I didn't have to make a hole there. Mr. DVLA man, that was already there. So anyway, that's the fuel tank battery box, ready to go, ready to be bolted in, and all I need to do is bolt in or secure the batteries in situation, and get the cables out and get the BMS cables out. So that's all relatively straightforward. I just need to get on with doing that. Also, you have to make up the BMS wires to do that, which is going to be another pain, but a day or two will sort that out. And as you can see, we're taking a look at the battery modules in the boot. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know there's a large battery box which is going to go right over this, completely cover these. There'll be a hole going down through to get for access and cables coming through and so on. Now, what I've done is, whenever I removed the top cover for this cubby hole, whatever you want to call it, there was plastic fastenings, little plastic clips that went down into each one of these places. There are 3 at the forward side of the module that were for hinges. Can't remember what the 2 at the back here were for, but they were actually square holes, they weren't round. And all I did was I put a little Rivnut into each of them and tightened it up. So I didn't create these holes, Mr. DVLA man, if you're looking. I didn't create these holes, they were already there. However, now I intend to use them. I think I may have already mentioned we're going to use this hole, which was originally a tie down. It was one of these, went in there. So that hole was already existing with a captive nut. So I can bolt down the main battery box using these. There's 4 of them all together, and I think I'll use these to secure the batteries. Okay guys, we're going to do something like this. As you can see, it is far from being a perfect piece of steel, but it really doesn't matter for the purposes of what I'm going to do here. All I need to do is get a pen, something like this, Sharpie, and draw around the batteries. Let's see on the other side. And I now have a perfect representation of where those battery modules need to be. And obviously I can come out a little bit either side. But the purpose of this is just to give a cradle to hold them. So what I'll do is I will cut off the bits I don't need. Basically cut out there and cut out there. So this little square will be cut out. Do the same here. Cut down here and cut across so that square is removed. And it means then that I can fold this bit up like that. And cut that square out and cut that square out. And that can be folded up there, that can be folded up there. And this will become a cradle for these battery modules. Probably would be easier for me to mark this now where they are, because once I get the edges folded up it'll be more difficult to drill the holes, so it might make more sense to do that now. And to do that I'll be using these, which are hole finding punches, markers, whatever you want to call them. And all you have to do is take a small hammer, hit a thump, and that will mark your hole for you. And mark the centre of that hole. Just go around and do them all. Now that I have the holes punched or marked, all I need to do is drill with a drill size suitable for some of these M6 Rivnuts. I think it's 9mm, something like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these all in now, but here's a top tip for you. Once you put the Rivnuts in, if you have one of these tools and you put the Rivnut in, you then have to unscrew this. There's an Allen key on the top, or an Allen nut on the top. Use a suitable drill or impact driver. It makes withdrawing this tool much faster. Right, so that's all of those Rivnuts in place. So what I need to do now, take this outside and put the cuts, like I say, halfway through, or there. Cut out these corners first. That's the first thing to do, and then halfway through, cut here. I know it's only thin steel, so quite a few. I'll probably end up going through it, but you actually have to have a piece of wood or something clamped to it to guide your grinder to keep it straight. But we'll go ahead and do that outside. Well, amazingly, the sun has come out for a few minutes, so hopefully long enough to let me get this done. Top tip, guys, don't let the sparks go directly into your overalls. It might set you on fire. Don't ask me how I know. Right, that's the corners cut out. So now to put our relief cuts into the sides, and ooh, it'd be easier if it was going the other way. Oh well, that's what I can do. I should have cut it on the other side, but it made it easier to pull. There you go, guys. One box. I'll get the welder fired up and we'll get them welded. Right, let's see how we get on here. Right, well, it's welded. It's not pretty, but it's welded. I'll put a wee bit down here. That'll do. Just in case you're wondering, these are a peculiar type of screw head. I think they're called spline, I'm not sure, but these are the original ones that were in the Volkswagen battery pack. Have a go with this. There you go, all screwed in. And because those are short, they don't even come through, which is good. So now I can put this in the boot of the car, just as it is. Yeah, heavy brute. There you go, sorted. That is sitting nice and level, it's not going to go anywhere. All I need to do now is to make brackets to go from the edge up to here, and up to here, and up to here. So I'll go ahead, what I'll do is I'll take the batteries out again so that I don't do any harm to them, and then start making up the brackets. Yes, start making up the brackets. Okay, so what I've got is loads and loads of these, which are the corners that I cut out when I made the boxes, in the same way I made this box for the back of the car. So that is plenty long enough, and I will cut that in half, and that'll do me 2. I will have to put some sort of sides, bevels, edges on it to give it some strength, but that's not difficult. Go ahead and get this cut in 2. Okay, we've got our 2 halves now. We've got our 2 halves now. We can start trying to work this out. What I'll end up doing is welding that to the outside of the box and then just bending it over. Somewhere about there. I'll probably try and straighten it up. I'm sure that's not straight, but I'll put it in the bender and get it bent. Okay guys, to bend this I'm going to use my very tidy bench and my homemade bender. Which attaches to the vise just like that. Like that and like that. And then all I gotta do, line up the line, and Bob's your uncle. Bent. See? Right, well, that was supposed to go down like that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I just need to mark this one back left. So, same again for this. Right, I'll go ahead, cut another one in half and make another 2 for the other end, and that's good. Right guys, well as you can see I've got 4 brackets made, just like that. They're not welded up yet, they're not tidied up, nothing at all, just I want to try and get them fitted to this. So as you can see I've got this one screwed in here. It's not secured to the box yet. And this is back right, which is here. So what I'm going to do now is try and line up those screws. Right, line up the holes and see if I can hopefully do this right. So that is our hole there and there. So now what I've got to do is figure out where it's going to go that way. Let's put a line there, a line there, and then just continue those up. And where they intersect is where I drill. That hole is probably perfect for an M6, but we'll just widen it out a bit so that we have a little bit of leeway. Alright, so with any luck, these screws will go in there, and that will be approximately correct. But because they're not welded, it means that there's plenty of give still, so it means that if I make a horrocks of these back ones, it's not so bad. So I'll go ahead and mark up and drill the back ones and get them screwed in, and then put a few tack welds on, and we're golden. So that's it guys, made. and painted and ready to go. And now it's tea time. I'm getting hungry, so I'm gonna have put the stuff away and go and get something to eat. But this is absolutely perfect for this job. It took me a while to think about it, but I got there in the end. And it ain't pretty. It's just an old scrap bit of steel that I couldn't be bothered cutting the quirky bits off. Hence why it's got a dippy bit there and a dippy bit there. Yeah, I could have squared it all off, but I really couldn't be bothered. For this job, it makes zero difference whether it looks pretty or not. The welds are ugly, but they're strong, and the brackets are ugly, but they're strong, so it'll do the job. When I get the other battery box on top of it, you'll never be seen. And just so that to try and make sure we don't have any fluids in here that aren't meant to be in here, like water. This is known as a fishbowl for a reason. I have seam sealed and painted about 5 times top and bottom around the edge here, so I don't believe water will get in through here. It can sometimes get in through some of these. I'll get the light over here. 3 holes over here, but they're reasonably well blocked up, so it should be okay there. It can also get in and the seal around the edge here, but it seems to be in good condition, so not too concerned about that. That is that's me done for the day. So anyway guys, thank you for watching, and until next time, bye for now.